So ever since I was a kid, music and the world around me has inspired me with sound and with sight. I love the sight of the mountains and I love the sound of music. I love the sound of cars roaring by and I love the sound of trains. And it still does inspire me to this day. I've always loved being normal as a kid, It may be a little bit messed up to say it like that, but, I've always loved being a healthy person. My dad's always told me, don't take for granted what you have, and I've always took it for serious. I've always wondered what it's like to be blind or deaf, though, because when you're blind, it's just darkness, or when you're deaf, you can't hear anything. It's just all you know is sight. So I've always wondered what it's like for a person who's blind or deaf, what they see or what they hear all the time, or do they see things with when they only see blackness? Do their brains show them something? So I based my topic on blindness and deafness and what it's like to get by in average everyday life for these people. So I've always wondered how it gets by when they have to get by in life, or how they grow up, or how they learn how to speak, or how they learn how to walk or talk and all that stuff. So I based my project on this, and I wanted to get answers from these questions that I've been asking since I was a kid. So my goal is for you guys to walk away being more thankful with what you have, or learning something off of my talk today. So deaf blindness is the one I'm going to start with. Deaf blindness is pretty much somebody who's either born or has been in an accident and they can't see nor hear, and they only have touch, smell, and taste. And apparently they're still able to learn and be able to speak when they're deaf and blind. So the way that they learn is through sign language. It's very hard for them to learn sign language, but pretty much what they do is they use their hands to feel what other people are signing, and they learn how to sign the same words. And they also, if they were normal before they got in an accident, then they can learn Braille, and Braille is pretty much. There's also a Uganda facility, and they teach kids who are blind deaf how to get by in everyday life, and they give them the tools to live, and they teach them how to talk. They teach them how to walk with blindness. They teach them how to sign, and most of all, they teach blind deaf kids how to wash their dishes, or how to do what they need to get by. So this is Braille. Braille is pretty much it's a 2x3. It's based on a 2x3 thing, but this red is basically where the dots are, and every pattern represents a letter, and it also every pattern represents a letter, and the patterns also represent numbers. So if they're able to learn Braille before they fully go blind or deaf, then they're able to communicate with this. There's also for people who are blind deaf, there's a keyboard that you type into, and when you press enter, it prints out a little Braille thing, so people can feel what you're trying to say, and they're able to respond with sign language. It's not all bad for people who are blind or deaf or blind deaf. For example, when you're blind, usually they turn out to be pitch perfect, which pretty much means they can, if they're playing with a band, they're able to pretty much just play perfectly because they're pitch perfect and they know how pitch works, because that's all they know is sound. Some examples of some pitch perfect blind singers and players are Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, Andrew Bocelli, and many others. They're actually some of the greatest composers that are known to people. One way that blind people walk and get around is through echolocation, which is very, very, very hard to learn, but it's possible for somebody who's blind or deaf. There's a man named Daniel that BBC interviewed, and pretty much he's been doing echolocation for 40 years. He's taught himself it, and he knows how to do it perfectly. He pretty much makes clicking sounds, and he listens and can explain something perfectly. Like in the interview, they walked up to a tree, and the interviewer said, Can you explain how this tree is perfectly? And without touching it or ever seeing it, he just clicked, and he was able to fully explain how tall it was. He was able to explain the details of it, where the branches were, and it's actually pretty amazing. And so blind teachers have been starting echolocation classes to teach blind people how to do echolocation, so that they're able to they're able to do this without a problem, and so that they can be able to walk around without the need of a seeing dog or a walking stick. And moving on, deafness. So a lot of people see deafness as it's better to get by as a deaf person, and that's not exactly the case. I took a poll, and 75% more people said that they'd rather be deaf than blind, and they said it'd be a lot more easy to get by, but that's not the case. Doing simple things like finding your car in a parking lot, or listening for the flight call at an airport, or taking a call just in general, just on the phone. Doing jobs as simple as anything with a phone that involves, or a job that involves anything with a phone. Stuff like managing. How are you going to manage when you only know sign language? It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder than you think. Now, people that are usually deaf are very, very imaginable. They don't know sound, or they don't know sight, they don't know sound, so they know sight, so they're very good at art. They don't know what makes sound and what doesn't. They could think that this table would make a sound just out of nowhere. They don't know this, so it's actually, I watched some videos on people that have been mostly deaf their whole life, and there's a little girl who's mostly deaf in the left ear and completely deaf in the right, and they gave her a hearing aid, and she was absolutely astonished that the fan made noise and that lights buzz, and she was just going ape. So it was pretty awesome, because you really don't really see it unless you're actually blind, or you don't see it unless you're actually deaf, that anything you can think make a sound unless somebody explains it to you. Ways that people usually have to get by to talk when they're deaf is through sign language, and there's different types of sign language. There's British Sign Language and American Sign Language. It's not a universal language. You'd have to learn it in different languages, but most common one is American Sign Language, ASL, and it's pretty basic. It's not too hard to learn, and if someone in your family goes deaf somehow, that's usually what they have to learn. So it's relatively easy to learn. It's just difficult because it's a whole new language. So I hope that anybody listening to this talk maybe picked up something, or maybe respects that they're able to see and hear a lot more, because you have it a lot better than a lot more, but it's pretty hard to get by. So thank you for your guys' time, and thank you for listening to my talk.